I don't watch movies in theaters all too often. Most new releases don't excite me in the slightest. However, when I saw the trailer to Iron Lung, the debut film from YouTube star Markiplier, I was instantly hooked. Not necessarily because I'm a massive Markiplier fan to begin with, I was more of a Jacksepticeye kid myself. Certainly, it's exciting when an internet celebrity decides to dip his toes into filmmaking, but more than just the prestige of being made by a YouTube personality, Iron Lung stuck out to me because it promised to be a science fiction isolation horror in an era where that genre is rather underfed. We don't get movies like Alien all too often anymore, which if you ask me, is a shame. But Iron Lung, to my pleasant surprise, proved a competent, dare I say great entry into the genre grandfathered by such classics as Ridley Scott's Alien. With this low-budget directorial debut, Markiplier made a true sci-fi horror classic that takes all the right cues from the movies that inspire it. And before anyone says it, yes, I'm aware that Iron Lung is based on the indie game of the same name. However, Markiplier clearly takes a ton of creative inspiration from other films and games.
We're starting to lose radio signal. You'll be at cruise depth soon, so refrain and be careful. You're on your own.
Iron Lung follows Simon, a man convicted of blowing up a space station who, rather than being executed, is sentenced to pilot a submarine into the dark, uncharted depths of a blood ocean on a mysterious moon. In short, he's a man without rights, used as free labor for the regime. Set in the distant future where humanity is struggling to discover untouched pockets of the universe amidst a resource scarcity, Iron Lung depicts a very desperate situation. The information we're given is very limited. We're relegated to Simon's limited perspective. We only know as much as he knows, which isn't a whole lot. But even still, he gets little hints as to the desperate situation above. Ava, his female captain, speaks to him through the radio, often stern and authoritative. But when Simon pushes back in the slightest, she's prone to crack. It's clear the stress is building and she's losing her cool.
There aren't enough of us left to be throwing lives away, but there is too much at stake not to take calculated risks. Eden doesn't understand that. You don't understand that.
Writing-wise, Iron Lung does a fantastic job humanizing just about everyone. Yes, we're mostly rooting for Simon. We want to see him succeed, and it's torturous to see him trapped in this submarine, an iron coffin from which he's not allowed to leave. Yet, we don't despise his commanders. They're dishonest, yes, but we can still sympathize with their plight. The human race is dying, and through Simon's eyes, we don't have the full picture of the devastation. He's resentful of being used over and over again, promised freedom for his efforts and yet never receiving it. However, it's easy to take for granted that those above are handling the grim realities which Simon is shielded from. We can sympathize with their burden to some extent. This is in stark contrast to another somewhat recent science fiction film, Mickey 17, which was excessively satirical and mean-spirited, making hateful caricatures out of most of its characters. Iron Lung was a pleasant surprise because Markiplier actually writes real human characters. Antagonistic at times, yes, but nonetheless relatable. I mentioned Alien earlier in this review, and I want to commend Iron Lung for invoking that classic sci-fi isolation horror tone. What makes Alien so horrifying is the feeling of utter detachment from any help. The Nostromo is drifting in the vastness of space, its crew at the mercy of the xenomorph it's taken aboard. Help is millions of miles away. Whatever kind of hell has hitched a ride in their ship, it's up to them alone to exterminate it. Nobody's coming to save them. Similarly, Iron Lung depends on a feeling of separation for its horror. We're scared for Simon because he's so far away from any repair station or civilizational hub. He's off the beaten path and, past a certain point, hopelessly unreachable. His vision is limited to the temporary flashes which his camera provides. Truly, it feels like he's blindly stumbling about in the dark, with unknown horrors lurking in these depths. Yes, he has a radio connecting him to HQ, but this often malfunctions, or he drives out of range, leaving him in these dry, quiet spells of utter loneliness. These periods of isolation serve to emphasize the horror. Even if, before, there was little his commanders could do to get him out of a pinch, at least they offered the illusion of safety by lending their voice via the radio, even if only to bark orders and demandingly ask questions. Surely, having somebody to talk to is better than having no one. After all, fear thrives in silence.
I didn't lie! I can't be responsible for your goddamn ignorance!
Catherine? Please don't leave me alone. Catherine? Catherine?
The frequent loss of contact between Simon and HQ harkens back to frictional games as SOMA, what my brother theorized to be an inspiration for the film. Certainly I can see the resemblance. Similarly, SOMA takes place underwater, with weird creatures stalking the halls of long-abandoned research stations. Well, abandoned might be the wrong word. As Simon, which just so happens to be the name of Iron Lung's protagonist as well, you sift your way through these dark and dangerous chambers, your only companion being the preserved consciousness of researcher Catherine, who talks to you via Omnitool stations placed at intervals throughout the game. It's like Iron Lung in that Simon is talking to someone who isn't really there, and although she comforts him, there's always the chance of tech breaking and losing Catherine for a spell.
I'm sure everyone would like to know the time traveler. If not, you still have...
Catherine? Kath? Hello, Catherine. What happened?
Watching Iron Lung, you'll often sigh and mutter to yourself, alone again. Markiplier does isolation horror really well here, teasing you with a sense of companionship only to revoke it not too long after. Having almost all spoken dialogue go through a radio is genius because it hinges human connection on unreliable technology, something which is bound to break or malfunction eventually. Thematically, Iron Lung nails the popular sci-fi message of self-reliance. Some of my favorite pieces of media, such as Alien or Dead Space, boast protagonists who, while offered some help along the way, eventually find that they have to finish the job themselves. Isaac Clarke is conveniently the only one capable of getting anything done on the USG Ishimura, so it's fitting he's also the one to fend off the final boss. And Ellen Ripley is the last one standing from the Nostromo, and without the company sending anyone to save her, she resorts to clever tactics of her own to blast the xenomorph out of the ship. Truly, by the end of these stories, it becomes clear that these protagonists can't rely on anyone but themselves. There's nobody coming to save them.
You did test this thing, right?
This is the test. Closing porthole shielding.
Simon from Iron Lung is rather used to receiving no help. Halfway through the movie, he loses all radio contact with HQ and finds himself alone, lost, and losing more oxygen by the minute. This is easily the best part of the movie. We get to see Simon's resilience and resourcefulness, the attributes that characterize my favorite sci-fi horror protagonists. Markiplier nails the role of one desperate convict, ignorant and left in the dark by his superiors, desperately trying to stay alive when death seems almost assured.
I just want to live. Is that so wrong? Why doesn't anybody else want that?
Life feels precious when it's all of a sudden made scarce. I love Simon's anger, sadness, and desperation. with bouts of inspiration and hope tossed into the mix. He feels the full gambit of human emotions. There's a cycle of grief. In Iron Lung, we're more or less watching a man who's already dead. He just hasn't accepted it yet. He's welded shut inside of a clunky, unreliable submarine, which, in all its rusted glory, just might get him killed. And it would be a stupid, impersonal death. Nobody would be around to care. Hopelessly stuck in the uncharted depths of a blood ocean, with death ever impending, Simon is faced with perhaps the most humiliating and stressful challenge of all, making a meaningless death mean something. When it seems guaranteed that he's to die an embarrassingly worthless death, alone, unseen and unheard, how does he find purpose in that? Markiplier tackles this existential dread so tastefully that you might think he's been making movies for years. All in all, Iron Lung is a triumph in sci-fi horror filmmaking. It manages to take the best parts of its various influences and synthesizes them into a modern-day classic. Sci-fi isolation horror is a fantastic genre, but one that's drastically underfed. We don't get enough films like Iron Lung, but I'm so grateful that Markiplier took a chance on this low-budget passion project. Rightfully, it's made its money back, and then a whole lot more. Whether you're a fan of Markiplier or you just like science fiction horror, you're bound to love it. It's a treat for gamers and sci-fi horror fans alike, and I highly recommend checking it out. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more content like this. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace out.